Yes, I am Tim. I did not plan an introduction for myself. I hoped that he would introduce me, but there's not a whole lot interesting about me. I went to school for Bible, which was a fun time. I really had no idea what I was doing before I went to school, so I found it very helpful. And really, what I care about most is teaching other people how to read their Bibles well. So hopefully that's what we can do today. Go ahead and turn to Numbers chapter 22. And while you're turning there, I'll just do a quick reminder of what you talked about last week, at least in part, right? So your main idea was God is faithful to his covenant, even when his people do not trust him, right? I kind of wish that I could keep that main idea for today, but I'm just going to add to it a little bit, all right? I'm also going to add to God is faithful to his covenant, even as people do not trust him. I'm going to add to that, God blesses even when his people deserve a curse. And you'll see how that applies to us as well. So Numbers chapter 14, don't turn there, is what you talked about last week, right? So you have the spies sent into the land of Canaan. They find that the land is exceedingly good, right? Flowing with milk and honey, which apparently was the standard of goodness back then. I don't know that flowing with milk and honey is exactly what I would expect for, the best possible place, but that's what they liked, and that was good, right? What else did they find in the land of Canaan? Go ahead. Giants. Literal giants, all right? I would say that generally speaking, the size of people in America has been gradually increasing, but we're nowhere close to where these giants were in terms of size, right? So that's a little intimidating, right? I am 5'11", not very tall, so I'm intimidated by anyone who's over 6 feet. So, and there are middle schoolers who have already surpassed that, which is terrifying. So we have giants in the land. And so what ends up happening? What is the report of the spies, or at least the grand majority of the spies, to the people of Israel when they come back? It's a good land, but we are scared, right? And so they don't believe that God can bring them into the land, right? And so they start grumbling against the Lord. And ultimately, what their punishment is that they do not get to enter into the land. God's people, right, the Israelites still enter into the land, but that generation does not. Why would it be a little silly that the people of Israel are afraid of the Canaanites? Go ahead. Yeah, they have God, right, the one true God with them. And what has God done for them over the past, a couple decades? Go ahead. So part of the Red Sea, right? Yep, as they're leaving the land of Egypt. Yes, good. What else? What else has he done? Go ahead. Yeah, he sent 10 plagues. Okay, so powerful God who also proves his power over the Egyptian gods, right? Lowercase g gods. Anything else? I'm sorry? He saves his people? Yeah. He brings them out of the land of Egypt, right? Brings them through the wilderness. Go ahead. He flooded the earth. Yep. Most of these people wouldn't be alive to see that, but yes, that's true. What else? Yeah, manna from heaven. I don't know the last time you walked outside and there was just bread laying on the ground, but that's pretty crazy, right? Another one would be water from the rock, right? Bitter water made sweet. Okay, so these people are miraculously taken out of the land of Egypt, brought through the wilderness, right? They're being led to the land that they're supposed to be conquering, right? The Lord has already said that they're going to conquer. They've seen all these miraculous signs. They've seen God work in numerous ways. They get right to the front door, and what do? They don't believe in their God. And before you're too quick to judge, I would just like to point out that we are all the exact same way with God, right? So don't go too far down that rabbit hole. But it is a little bit surprising, right, that they would treat the Lord this way. Interestingly enough, the language that's used there, it's almost like they hate their own God, which is really sad given the amount of energy that the Lord has given in protecting and saving his people from a really harsh environment, right? And so one thing that does say, though, is that signs, miracles, don't necessarily produce faith in and of themselves. Are we good on that point? We have a heart problem, and the problem that we have is we want to sin. We want the things that we want. We don't want to believe in God. It's too hard to believe in God. God calls us to do difficult things like wander through the wilderness with minimal access to food, right? Even though he's providing for us along the way, it is easier in our minds to go our own way. So as a response to the people, right, the Lord threatens to disinherit the people and start a new people from Moses. Did you catch that in Numbers 14? Moses intercedes on their behalf, right? He prays for the people of Israel. And ultimately, the Lord chooses to allow the nation of Israel to go into the land, but with a little bit of a stipulation, right? So my first question is, why is the book of Numbers called Numbers? Anybody know? Okay, that's one number, but it's not the main one. Any other ideas? Nope. Who knows what a census is?
It's like when they make the people census them.
All right. Yeah, so we're counting the number of people, right? And actually, in Numbers chapter 1, we have a lot of the names of those people, right? The names of the fathers' houses. And then also at the end of the book of Numbers, we have another census. What do you think might be different about that census as compared to the first one in the book? Has anything changed? I'm sorry? I can't hear what he said.
More people.
Not more people, different people. In fact, the number of people is almost exactly the same. It's just over 600,000, right, of the people who are named. But an entire generation of people has died. And the reason for that comes from Numbers chapter 14, right? So keep your finger at Numbers 22. Go back to Numbers 14. I'm going to read 20 through 25. Then the Lord said, I have pardoned according to your word. So this is after Moses praying for the people. But truly, as I live, and as all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord, none of the men who have seen my glory and my signs that I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have yet put me to the test these 10 times, and have not obeyed my voice, shall see the land that I swore to give to their fathers. And none of those who despised me shall see it. Here's the exception, right? But my servant Caleb, right, one of 2 spies who came back with a good report, right? Because he has a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land into which he went, and his descendants shall possess it. Now, since the Amalekites and the Canaanites dwell in the valleys, turn tomorrow and set out for the wilderness by the way to the Red Sea. Interestingly enough, God keeps his promise. So again, keep your one finger at chapter 22 and move on to chapter 26 here. If you're looking at the chapter heading, you will see Census of the New Generation. That's a really good hint for you, okay? So chapter 26, starting in verse 63. These were those listed by Moses and Eleazar the priest, who listed the people of Israel in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. But among these, there was not one of those listed by Moses and Aaron the priests, who had listed the people of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. For the Lord had said of them, they shall die in the wilderness. Not one of them was left except for Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun. So God kept his promise. And honestly, most of the book of Numbers is pretty sad. You have a lot of disbelief on behalf of the people, and frankly, a lot of people die. And if you want to read about how the people die, you can read the rest of the book of Numbers. Well, we're going to read Numbers chapter 22 and a little bit after. So here we have a story. It's the story of Balaam. Balaam's donkey. Have you ever heard of it? I got like 4 nods. Oh, okay, we got more nods that time. That's great. Biblical stories have another name. Have you ever heard the term narrative? Okay, narrative in the Bible is God telling a story in a way that tells us something about him or something about ourselves, right? So here we have the story of Balaam. A little bit of backstory. We have Balak, very similar name to Balaam, I know, who is the king of Moab. He sees the Israelites coming towards Moab, and how does he feel? Do you know? Anybody? He is scared, all right? Why would he be scared of the people of Israel? Yeah, because he's heard about all the signs and wonders that the Lord has done for them as they've gone through the wilderness, Egypt not being the least of those, right? And so what he does is he decides to hire a pagan prophet. Pagan meaning someone who is not part of the nation of Israel, right? Someone who does not align himself to the Lord, the one true God of Israel. And so he calls Balaam, Balak, king of Moab, calls Balaam, this pagan prophet, and says, I want you to pronounce curses over the nation of Israel so that I can beat them in battle. All right? Sounds like a pretty decent idea. So, chapter 22, starting in verse 7. So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the fees for divination, right? He's going to do some prophesying in their hand. And they came to Balaam and gave him Balak's message. And he said to them, lodge here tonight, and I will bring back word to you as the Lord speaks to me. Interesting side note. What do you notice about the word Lord there in your text? Or what what it should look like? Is it like small, all caps?
All capital.
Yes, great job. Do you know what that means? Yahweh. Great, perfect. How in the world does a pagan prophet know Yahweh, the one true God of Israel? This is a little bit surprising, right? But anyways, let's just take that for granted and keep going. So the princes of Moab stayed with Balaam. Verse 9, and God came to Balaam and said, who are these men with you? Does God not know who these people are? Sometimes he asks us questions so that we will tell him what's going on, right? To get the ball rolling a little bit. And Balaam said to God, Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent to me, saying, behold, a people has come out of Egypt, and it covers the face of the earth. Now come, curse them for me. Perhaps I shall be able to fight against them and drive them out. God said to Balaam, you shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. Why are the people of Israel blessed? Do you know? What did he say? God's chosen people. Yeah. Where did that start? Do you remember who it started with? Abraham. Good. When did God call Abraham? Do you remember? In the book of Genesis, chapter 12. All right. You don't have to turn there if you don't want to, but listen. Genesis chapter 12, he's called Abram at the time, right before his name gets changed. Genesis chapter 12, starting in verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Sounds like lots of blessing, right? Which is good. The specifics of that blessing are explained over time, right? What does that actually mean? But in this case, right, we have God telling Balaam that they are a blessed people. Israel is a blessed people. And so Balaam should not be able to curse them. So in verse 13, chapter 22 again, so Balaam rose in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, go to your own land, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you. So the princes of Moab rose and went to Balak and said, Balaam refuses to come with us. All right. One and done, right? Incorrect. Once again, Balak sent princes, more in number and more honorable, because honorable princes are a better idea, I guess. And they came to Balaam and said to him, thus says Balak, the son of Zippor, let nothing hinder you from coming to me, for I will surely do you great honor. And whatever you say to me, I will do. Come, curse this people for me. But Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the command of the Lord my God to do less or more. Sounds great. So you too, please stay here tonight that I may know what more the Lord will say to me. What did the Lord already tell Balaam? Don't go, right? So Balaam is now returning to the Lord a second time. Maybe the Lord will change his mind, right? Why do you think that would be? Just based on context clues here. Because he wants what? Yeah, he's got important people, right? So you've got this component of honor. What else? What else was he promised? Silver and gold, riches, wealth. I mean, it sounds like a great idea. So if there's any way that this situation can work out, why not try? And so Balaam does, in fact, try. Verse 20, God came to Balaam at night and said to him, if the men have come to call you, rise, go with them, but only do what I tell you. Right? Very important caveat there. So Balaam rose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the princes of Moab. And so here we have, in the middle of our story, a silly song. That's not true. It's not a song. But it is silly. It's a silly story. God's anger was kindled because he went, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as his adversary. Now, wait a second. Didn't God just say that he could go? Right? Back in verse 20, if the men have come to call you, rise, go with them, but only do what I tell you. So we're going to need to hear a little bit more from this story, the context clues for why it might be a bad idea that Balaam chooses to, in fact, go, right? So the Lord's anger is kindled. Second half of verse 22, now he was riding on the donkey, and his two servants were with him. And the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road, with a drawn sword in his hand. And the donkey turned aside out of the road and went into the field. And Balaam struck the donkey to turn her into the road. It's a little bit rude, okay, admittedly. Verse 24, then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the vineyards with a wall on either side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed against the wall and pressed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her again. Okay, that's 2 times now. Then the angel of the Lord went ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. She literally can't do anything else. She can't go anywhere, right? And Balaam's anger was kindled, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey. Okay, little miracle here, right? And the donkey said to Balaam, what have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? And Balaam was surprised. Nope. Balaam said to the donkey, completely glosses over the fact that the donkey is talking to him, right? Because you have made a fool of me, I wish I had a sword in my hand, for then I would kill you. I mean, I think this is maybe a little bit of an overreaction. Does that sound accurate to you guys? And the donkey said to Balaam, talking still, right? Am I not your donkey on which you have ridden all your life long to this day? Is it my habit to treat you this way? And he said, no. Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam. So there's something interesting going on here, right? Balaam is so insistent on making this work that he is completely blind to everything else that's going on around him. He has intentionally put up spiritual blinders so that he can get his way. And now this isn't the main point of the text, right? But it is worth noting We do this to God all the time. He gives us a very clear instruction, and we choose to go our own way. And then he, tries to give us little borders, tries to put something up in our way, and we are just zoned in, right? We will do whatever it takes. We will even start hitting donkeys, right? We will sin to get what we want. We will sin to get to that end goal. And so obviously, by way of negative example, right? Don't be like Balaam. This is not a good thing that he is doing here. But fortunately, the Lord opens his eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his sword drawn in his hand, and he bowed down and fell on his face. Verse 32, just in case you got lost. And the angel of the Lord said to him, "Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to oppose you, because your way is perverse before me," or reckless. "The donkey saw me and turned aside before me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely now I would have killed you and let her live." So point number 1 on why the Lord is opposing this, right, is because we are assuming that Balaam has his spiritual eyes closed, right? He's blinding himself to what the Lord wants. And then we have number 2 coming up here as well. Verse 34, "Then Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I did not know that you stood in the road against me. Now therefore, if it is evil in your sight, I will turn back. And the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, Go with the men, but only speak the word that I tell you. So Balaam went on with the princes of Balak." Again, by way of suggestion, we have a little hint of what was potentially going to happen here, right? The Lord explicitly told Balaam not to go. The Lord explicitly said that the people of Israel were blessed. It is very likely, we don't know for sure, but based on the context here, that Balaam was just going to do what Balak, the king of Moab, had asked and curse Israel, which is a big no-no, right? Because God has already blessed the people of Israel. So here we have a second time the Lord tells him to speak only what he wants. And so eventually Balaam makes it to Balak, and we have this scene where we start talking about a couple of different prophecies, okay? We're going to skip ahead a little bit just for the sake of time. So if we have this whole story setting up this situation where Balak wants to say what he wants, and the Lord is Balaam wants to say what he wants, and the Lord says to Balaam, "No, only say what I'm going to tell you to say," you would think that it would be relatively important afterwards what the Lord actually says through Balaam, right? Does that seem like reasonable logic to you guys? All right, great. I'm going to ask you another question here. What do you notice about what happens to the text right around verse 7 and following, and then again at verse 18 and following, and then 24 verse 3 and following? What happens? What do you notice? How does the text change visibly in your Bible? Any thoughts? It's indented. Wow, crazy, I know, right? Who would have thought that all of your word processing skills would come into play here? This is actually a very helpful thing for us. What has happened is really, really intelligent biblical scholars have been reading the Bible for lots and lots of years and have figured out what biblical Hebrew poetry sounds like, okay? And then when Hebrew poetry pops up, what they will do is in your text, you will see some indentation. What you will notice also is if you were to flip to the book of Psalms, for example, the entire book of Psalms is indented, right? Why? Because it's Hebrew poetry. What's interesting here, though, is we have poetry in the middle of, what's the genre? Do you remember from the beginning? Story? Narrative. Perfect. So it's a little surprising that we would have Hebrew poetry, right? I would like to posit to you guys that anytime you see poetry pop up in narrative, it is very, very important. And pay attention. Usually what's happening is the biblical authors are teaching you how to read the text by giving you some additional information in that way. It's already happened a few times, even before you get to this point, and we'll talk about at least one of those in just a minute. But just so you guys know what to look for, when you see indentation like this in the middle of narrative, it can be very, very important, all right? So let's go ahead and drop down to chapter 23, verse 7. Balaam took up his discourse and said, "From Aram Balak has brought me, the king of Moab from the eastern mountains. Come, curse Jacob for me and denounce Israel. How can I curse whom God has not cursed? And how can I denounce whom the Lord has not denounced? From the top of the crags I see him." Him who? Well, from the context, most likely we have Israel, right? Jacob being the head listed here. "From the hills I behold him. Behold, a people dwelling alone, and not counting itself among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob?" This is another partial fulfillment of what's happening in Genesis 12, 15, 17, right? The Abrahamic covenant, right? That the Lord would multiply Abraham's descendants, right? So we have lots of them like dust. "Or number the fourth part of Israel. Let me die the death of the upright, and let my end be like his." That is, it's an upright nation. Okay, so that's an interesting start. Balak is really unhappy about this, right? Why did he call Balaam in? He wants Balaam to curse the nation of Israel. And what has Balaam done? He has blessed the nation of Israel, right? Fulfillment of Genesis 3, the promise in Genesis 3 that we already talked about. Skip down again to Balaam's second oracle, because Balak is like, you know what? Let's try again. I'm going to take you to a different mountaintop. We're going to do another sacrifice, and we're going to see if we can get a different result, okay? Drop down to 23, verse 18. Balaam took up his discourse and said, "Rise, Balak, and hear. Give ear to me, O son of Zippor. God is not man that he should lie, or a son of man that he should change his mind. Has he said, and will he not do it? Or has he spoken, and will he not fulfill it? Behold, I received a command to bless," right? Very true. "He has blessed, and I cannot revoke it." That is, the Lord has blessed, and it cannot be revoked. Verse 21. "He has not beheld misfortune in Jacob, nor has he seen trouble in Israel." So you can tell that Jacob and Israel are being interchanged here, right? Basically meaning the same thing, the nation of Israel. "The Lord their God is with them, and the shout of a king is among them." Why is it surprising that we would have mention of a king at this point in Israel's history? They don't have a king. Who's their leader right now? Couldn't hear it. Okay. Moses. Yeah, Moses is the current active leader at this point in Israel's history. They don't have a king. So it's a little interesting that we would have mention of a king at this point, right? Okay. Interesting point number one. Verse 22, "God brings them out of Egypt and is for them like the horns of the wild ox." What are horns used for in nature? You were going to say, go ahead.
Usually, when two animals are fighting, it's usually for defense.
Yeah. So horns are typically for fighting, battling, right? And are in the Bible usually a symbol of strength, okay? In that way. Verse 23, "For there is no enchantment against Israel, no divination against Jacob, no divination against Israel. Now it shall be said of Jacob and Israel, what God has wrought. Behold, a people, as a lioness it rises up, and as a lion it lifts itself. It does not lie down until it has devoured the prey and drunk the blood of the slain." Like, ooh, that got dark fast, right? What is being discussed here is victory in battle, right? Again, think Hebrew poetry. This is also prophecy, as we'll see in a second here, but this is a way of saying this king will be victorious in battle, and there will be a lot of blood in the battle, okay? We also have this mention of a lioness and as a lion halfway through verse 24 there. What does a lion usually symbolize? What is the lion with reference to the jungle, for example? which is not actually true. It's just a saying. Lions don't live in the jungle. Don't believe it. Go ahead, somebody shout it out. King, perfect. Okay, so we have king, wild ox with horns, strength, king. Pretty interesting language. Seems a little strange at this point, but believe it or not, we've actually heard this language before if you've been reading through the text of Scripture. Keep your finger in Numbers and turn back to Genesis 49. What do you notice visually about Genesis chapter 49? Indentation, great. We have learners. This is perfect. And what does indentation typically signify? Hebrew poetry, yes. So, and again, in this case, on either side of this chapter, you see narrative, okay? So it's a very similar situation as to what we have in Numbers, okay? Genesis chapter 49, we won't read the whole thing, but look in verse 8. Judah, your brothers shall praise you, your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies, your father's sons shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped, he crouched down as a lion, and as a lioness, who dares rouse him? Does that sound familiar? Did we just read that in Numbers chapter 23? Pretty interesting. Let's keep going. 49 verse 10, the scepter. What does a scepter typically signify? A king, yeah. Pretty interesting that that's similar language as what we were just reading. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Binding his foal to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. That's another little bit of foreshadowing. We won't talk about that. He has washed his garments in wine and his vesture in the blood of grapes. So again, we have blood mentioned here. His eyes are darker than wine and his teeth whiter than milk. So very similar imagery. We have a conquering king, okay? Which is even more surprising, I think, in Genesis 49, because we are way before having a king in the nation of Israel. So, flip back to Numbers chapter 24. And I want you to be asking yourself, who might this king be? Who are we talking about here? I know you're giving spoilers over there, but we're going to get there, okay? Chapter 24 of Numbers, starting in verse 3. He, Balaam, took up his discourse and said, the oracle of Balaam, the son of Beor, the oracle of the man whose eye is opened, the oracle of him who hears the words of God, who sees the vision of the Almighty falling down with his eyes uncovered. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your encampments, O Israel, like palm groves that stretch afar, like gardens beside a river, like aloes that the Lord has planted, like cedar trees beside the waters. Water shall flow from his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. His king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. Now, I'm not expecting you guys to know all of the stuff that's going on here, but what I do want you to know is that we've got a lot of talk about a king, right? And that his kingdom will be exalted. Verse 8, God brings him out of Egypt, right, like we've seen, and is for him like the horns of the wild ox. So just like we saw in verse 22 of chapter 23. He shall eat up the nations, his adversaries, and shall break their bones in pieces and pierce them through with his arrows. Sound like a conqueror? He crouched, he lay down like a lion, and like a lioness who will rouse him up. Have we heard that before? We've now heard it twice, Genesis 49 and Numbers chapter 23. And then the end of that verse, which is, again, a repetition of what's going on in Genesis chapter 12, which is God's covenant with Abraham, right? Or Abram at the time. Blessed are those who bless you, and cursed are those who curse you. So this is a very interesting thing that we would have a conversation about a king, a conquering king, when we're at a time in Israel's history when there is no king yet, right? Eventually, the people are going to ask for a king, and there are going to be some bumps along that road. We have a couple of decent kings. They're all sinners, as you would expect, right? But they're not quite the level of king that you would want ruling over the nation of Israel. Before getting into too much detail on how this expands, all I want to say is the Bible is meant to be read over and over and over and over, right? And that includes the Old Testament. In this scenario, we have this king, right? This conquering king. Ultimately, what this is talking about is final judgment, right? And I mean, it's just a beautiful picture of what God is planning to do with the gospel. And it's even more surprising because it comes at a time in Israel's history when they are completely off the rails. What did we say the book of Numbers was about? Census 1, Census 2. The whole generation is wiped out, right? So in the midst of punishment, God is giving us just a really small glimpse of the gospel. And at this point, it's a little unclear exactly how that's going to work, right? But we do have some glimpses of this victorious king coming in the future. Let's go ahead and pick it back up in chapter 24, verse 15. He took up his discourse and said, actually, I'm going to back up a second. Look at verse 14 there. And now, behold, I am going to my people. Come, I will let you know what will happen. I will let you know what this people will do to your people in the latter days. That is, the people of Israel will do to the people of Moab. And that phrase, latter days, signifies end times, right? Latter days. So anytime you see that phrase, that's usually where things are pointing. So verse 15, and he took up his discourse and said, the oracle of Balaam, the son of Beor, the oracle of the man whose eye is opened, the oracle of him who hears the words of God, we've heard this before, right? And knows the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of the Almighty falling down with his eyes uncovered. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter, right? Remember Genesis 49? Shall rise out of Israel. It shall crush the forehead of Moab, and break down all the sons of Shet. Edom shall be dispossessed. What's Edom? Anybody know? Anybody know who Edom descends from, the nation of Edom? Esau. Yeah, whoever said that. Good job. Seir also, which is where they live, the hill country of Seir. Seir also, his enemies, shall be dispossessed. Israel is doing valiantly, and one from Jacob shall exercise dominion and destroy the survivors of cities. So again, we have this victorious conquering king executing end times judgment, which is really, really cool, actually. Now, obviously, at least in this text, this is a somewhat darker version of that prophecy, right? Or a darker part of it. And something that you need to understand is sin deserves punishment, right? What is the punishment for sin? Death. And since you were just in Leviticus, how did they kind of get around that for a little while? Why didn't people just get killed all the time? Sacrifices, yeah. So let's be careful not to talk over each other. Let's try here. But yeah, feel free to shout out if you know. So sacrifices stand in the place of us, right? So to speak, in the Old Testament, in the Levitical law, sacrifices stand in our place so that we don't have to die for our sin. How many sacrifices were people having to do at that point? Just like a couple? tons and tons of sacrifices. I mean, think of all the bulls and the rams and the goats and the birds and the bread and the wine and the grain. I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? How much they had to do just to cover their sins. I mean, interestingly enough, this is why Jesus coming is so crazy cool, because he is one sacrifice that pays for all of our sins for all time, and it's done. We don't have to go through all the stuff that the people in this day and age would have had to go through to pay for their sins. So that's good. So what is this text saying to us? Number one, don't be like Balaam. Don't let your desires blind you to what God is telling you, right? Don't let your sin put you into a pathway that ultimately leads you away from God. Why does God continue to bless Israel even though they continue to sin? He loves them. That's a great answer. There's more. What else? Go for it. He made a promise to do it, right? He promised to bless them, and he continued to do it even though they were sinning, right? So we have a God who is good and gracious and loving and kind, and a God who also keeps his promises. Why is it important that God acts this way with the people of Israel? Well, first of all, number one, it suggests that he's going to act that way with us, right? There will be a statement that people will make. You may have heard it already, that the God of the Old Testament is not like the God of the New Testament. Has anybody heard that before? You will. That's one of the things that people will use as an excuse not to believe in God entirely, or just not to believe in the Old Testament, right? Both of those things being bad, obviously. But what this shows us is that God is consistent from the beginning of time all the way through to today's day and age with Christ, right? Which is very good. And number two, then, too, it's important that God is acting this way to the people of Israel because it gives us hope even while we live in sin, right? So last week, Schultze quoted Romans chapter 5, verse 8. And he stole all my thunder, but it's okay because we're going to read it again. God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. This is the way God acts all the time. We deserve nothing from him, absolutely nothing. And all he does is sacrifice for us, right, on our behalf. So, God is faithful to his covenant even when we don't trust him. He blesses his people even when they deserve a curse, right? Ultimately, also promising that Jesus would come eventually. And he blesses us even though we are sinners. Those are some really great things. Does anybody have any questions? Go for it. Speak up.
Why are we still in here?
That's a great question. We're going to finish up real soon. Go for it. You know, that is so that you can ask questions later. Anybody have questions related to this text? Anything? Go for it. That's a good question. Balaam is a really interesting character. One of the things that I was going to ask you guys is whether or not you thought Balaam was a good guy or whether he needed a little bit of work. Any ideas on that? Does he need some work? Yeah, I would say so. So to be honest, Couldn't really tell you. It sounds like he knows who the Lord of Israel is, right? Yahweh. But we don't know how close his relationship is. Actually, if you go later in the book of Numbers, let me see if I can find it. I think it's 28 or 29. Let me see if I had it in a note. We have another statement basically saying, Numbers chapter 31, 31 verse 16. Behold, these on Balaam's advice caused the people of Israel to act treacherously against the Lord in the incident of Peor, and so the plague came among the congregation of the people of the Lord. So not a great thing there either, right? Long story short, you can go all the way to the New Testament, and basically everyone says Balaam of Peor is not a great guy. So did he have a great relationship with the Lord, the one true God of Israel? Probably not, even though he claims to have that relationship. Anything else? All right, great. Let's pray. God, thank you for your word. Thank you for teaching us, even though we are stubborn like Balaam. Thank you for being kind and gracious to us, having mercy on us when we deserve punishment. And then ultimately, thank you for Jesus, and even just a brief little snapshot of what kind of a king he's going to be like. As a conqueror, victorious over sin, judging the earth, and that's a good thing. God, thank you mostly for Jesus, that he would die on the cross for our sins while we're still sinners, giving us grace, giving us mercy when we do not deserve it. We love you, and we thank you in Jesus' name.